Wright, and I'm interviewing author Tom Frye about his book, Behind the Eight Ball. So, Tom, how are you doing today?
Hey, all right, Rick. How are
All
you?
right, let's get to it. I mean, what was your original idea of Behind the Eight Ball, and how did you come up with it?
Well, I'd always wanted to do a biography, and I've written it probably 4 or 5 times, and
Right?
never did publish it. Just
Oh,
wasn't
really?
finished. Pardon?
Oh, really?
Yeah, it just wasn't finished yet. And I started writing short stories on Facebook. I've never written short stories before. I always have, long 100-page, 300-page stories, and
Right.
suddenly I was forced to write one-page stories and condense even those for some of my readers. And so somebody said, you ought to write a story about these. You ought to combine them in a book because they were part, autobiography. And
Right.
so I did, and patched them all together and come up with this 45 years worth of my youth work,
Oh my
and
gosh.
pretty entertaining.
It is. I found the book immensely entertaining.
Yep,
I mean,
yep.
really, really a good book. Now, tell us, if you would, about all the interesting characters you encounter in the book.
Well, my
Just a
first,
brief synopsis.
yeah, my first chapter in the book deals with a kid. He was 11 years old. He ran down the street 6 blocks, and I chased him because he blew out of anger management and
Yep.
climbed up on a 6-story building and tried to jump off. He was hanging by the tips of his fingers, and
Now, is he hanging by the tips of his fingers over the
no,
street?
he was hanging like this with his hands behind him, and he was head down like this, gonna
Oh
gonna
my
go
gosh.
drop 6 stories.
Wow.
So
Which would
he
have
was
killed him, obviously.
Yeah, he was mad because he's a biker kid, and the Health and Human Services placed him with a cop and his wife, and they gave him so much structure he just couldn't deal with it, and he didn't know who to be loyal to, and so he was just tormented and conflicted, and so um, I talked him out of it and pulled him off the ledge, and I walked him back to the car, and I drove him on back to his foster parents. 2 days later, I talked to his caseworker, and she asked me if I would take him on emergency stay, and I did. And he ended up staying with me for 2 years after that.
For
But
2 years, huh?
yeah, but that's how the book starts. I start off with a bang. Um, I had so many of those crisis interventions that I was involved in, and I think that was the most dramatic. Um, and I felt good that I had saved him because he would have died. I mean, if he would have dove off that
Yeah, I
building.
guess so. Dropping 6 stories would be enough to kill anyone.
Yeah,
Well,
and he
except
was,
an action superhero.
yeah, which is another book.
Yes.
But no, that's and then I interwove that with all the I had a lot of crisis interventions that I was involved in, and where I was up against a kid wanting to kill himself, and several times that happened to me. I don't know, it just they crossed my path for some reason. So I
Really?
wrote about those, and then I wrote about my childhood, and
So wait a minute, this second kid, what was his problem?
the second boy,
That he wanted to kill himself.
oh, he had bipolar, and he was diagnosed with bipolar and defiant disorder, and
And what disorder?
defiance disorder,
Defiance disorder. Yeah.
oppositional defiance disorder. It's a term.
Wow. That's a big term, right?
And just like synergy, synergy is when kids use their energy for one thing only, and they're centered on how they're going to win their fight, and that's synergy. And uh,
Right.
they get so defiant, and I had so many, I had so many of those I worked with too. It was, oh man,
Oh boy.
yeah, yeah.
So what other kids did you encounter along your way?
Well, several of my kids were um, they were damaged early on in life. They had all kinds of problems.
When you say
They,
damaged early on in life, how were they damaged?
I don't know if they call it abused or just coming from a dysfunctional family.
Right.
They were angry, they were defiant, they were rebellious. You told them no, they said yes. You said yes, they said no. Struggling all the time, and
They had defiance disorder too, right?
oh yeah, oh
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
This wasn't probably diagnosed like that, but a lot of them had ADHD, and at first I was against meds. I really didn't think meds were working because they experimented with so many kids. They one time a med would do a paradoxical effect. Instead of working like it's supposed to, it did the opposite. And so,
Really?
yeah, and we had a doctor here. He was a psychiatrist. He was a quack, and he used meds right and left, and
Oh boy.
doled out meds. And so at the very beginning, I was against it, and then I took some of those kids in my home as foster kids, and by golly, those meds saved their lives. I mean, they made a difference of night and day, in their school functioning and even paying attention at home.
Now, what kind of meds were they?
Oh, like Adderall, and there was
Adderall. What does Adderall do specifically?
well, I'm not so sure, but they used it in ADHD kids, and
Right.
they had
What effect did it have on the kids, in other words?
oh, it calmed them down, and
Really?
yeah, and some kids it calmed down so much they'd fall asleep, and so that's why like a paradoxical effect. But
You
a
know,
lot of
I was under the impression that Adderall hyped kids up, not made them fall asleep, but
well,
it
no,
has the opposite effect on them.
no, that's the thing. It does the opposite effect on most people. It would speed them up, but on some of those ADHD kids, it slows them down and it
Really?
calms them down. Yeah, and I can't remember the main drug right now. What it was? It was
Prozac?
no, there was another one. It's common for ADHD. Um, doesn't come to mind right now, but
Well,
my my one kid one night, we went to anger management, and he didn't have his pills that night. And we got to anger management with four of my other boys, and they got on the elevator and they were jumping up and down, and it got stuck between floors.
whoa.
And I had to call a maintenance guy to come, and the maintenance guy started laughing and saying, "Should we leave them on there for another 30 minutes?" I said, "No, we got to get them off." Um, so when they come down to the ground level,
Yeah.
they said my kid had been pushing all the buttons on the thing, and that's what stopped it.
Oh no.
Yeah, so we got home, and I said, "You didn't take your meds tonight, did you?" And he flew off to the kitchen, and he come back and threw an empty bottle at me. And I said, "What's that?" And he says, "I took them. I took them all." And
You
I
took
said,
them all?
"Yep."
Oh boy.
And I had another boy staying that night, and he says, "You idiot!" He says, "You're gonna die." And I says, "Let's go." And he goes, "Where?" And I go, "To the ER." I says, "You're gonna get your stomach pumped."
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and I made him go, and that's the one regret I have in all my work is I remember that night because I did not stay with him. I was so mad for him taking those like that, and I thought, let the nurses deal with him because he's just going to have a storm. He's going to have a fit.
Oh my
And he
gosh.
did. Took four nurses to restrain him. He's 11 years old, weighed
Wait, it
about
took
55.
four nurses to restrain him? He's only
Four
11 years
nurses, yes.
old?
They had to
Only
hold
11
him.
years old, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Like I
amazing.
said, he had synergy. He would go ape on his energy would just come flying out.
Wow.
And they strapped him down, and they gave him charcoal because you give kids charcoal, liquid charcoal, and it makes them throw up. And the next morning I came in.
Liquid charcoal, right?
Yeah,
Makes you throw up? I never knew that.
yeah.
In fact, I never knew there was such a thing as liquid charcoal.
Well, yeah, it's not, must be nasty stuff because
Oh my gosh. Yes, I guess so, right?
he had
It
it
makes them
inside of
throw
his.
up, right?
Yeah, he had it inside of his nostrils, on the side of his mouth, and he says, "I had a hell of a night." I says, "Yep." I said, "That's what happens when you take all those meds like that."
You know, I was
So,
going to ask you the next question. How do you interact with these kids? I mean, how do you calm them down, overcome their defiance disorder? How do you
Well,
do that? How exactly do you
I
interact with them?
I kept them active. I took them to the woods. We went canoeing, we went bike riding, we went hiking, horseback riding. I kept them doing stuff all the time, and they weren't all bad. They weren't all acting up at all times. It was
Did
just,
that help?
oh yeah, oh yeah. Some
So
of the
something
things,
to do, something to focus on, something to concentrate on,
yeah,
to absorb their attention, kind of displace their anger management tendencies.
yeah. See, I did a truancy program where I had 60 wards of the state that I got to school and to court and drug treatment, and I finally got the caseworkers to pay them $1 a day to go to school. And the principals around here were having a fit about that, saying, well, you can't bribe kids to go. Well, that started happening out east. They did it all over the place and it worked. And so
Really?
it worked here. And after 90 days, most of my kids had $90. So we went out and bought skateboards. And I got them about 5 of them skating.
Wow.
And I built a ramp in my backyard, a 4 foot half pipe, and
Right?
had to chain it up at night because I had every kid in the every kid in Havelock coming over and climbing my fence.
I imagine so.
But see, they earned their money and they went to school. And if they didn't get that $1 a day, and it got
Wow.
subtracted from what they were going to get. And I read about it later. 10 years later, I read they did that in Chicago. They did that in New York, and I thought I was ahead of my time then.
Yeah, this is a really innovative program,
Yeah,
Tom.
it was
It is.
crazy. And then the thing about that is I had probation officers, administrators, teachers, caseworkers, and parents all sit down at the same table and talk about one kid. And we all networked, and nobody had done that before. And
Really?
this probation officer said, "This is very odd." He says, "I've never had this kind of meeting before." And yeah, it worked. So they hired me to be a consultant, and they paid me $35 an hour to teach people, and it was crazy. I mean, it was just something I come up with, and
Wow.
yeah, so it was quite a program, and money ran out for it, and so yeah, it went
How
by the
long did it
wayside.
run, Tom?
Yeah.
How long
Um,
did it run?
oh, 3 years.
Oh, 3 years.
Yep,
That's
yep. Three
exceptional.
3 years. I had kids going to court. I had them going to home or school. I had them going to drug treatment.
Right.
Um, and I kept in touch with them. That was the thing. I connected with them. I related to them, and a lot of those kids, they respected me, and I gave them incentives. If they were ready to go to school in the morning, they got McDonald's for breakfast.
Really.
Yeah, if they're
And
good
that
at
worked, obviously.
what's that?
That worked.
Oh yeah, yeah. It was just giving them an extra attention, and I had one boy. I had a friend. She was a female, and she was mad at me all the time because I was spending so much time with my kids, and she took one of my kids to court one day. She had to drive him there, and he told her that I was more of a father to him than his real dad.
Wow.
So on
That's
Father's
quite a
Day,
compliment.
on Father's Day, she sent me a card that said, "Father to none, but dad to so many." And I thought,
Oh, that's really sweet.
yeah, it was really nice of her. And
Now, who would you say is the dominant character in the book besides yourself and why?
well, I
Your
was going to say,
biography, what character stands out in your mind the most?
well, me maybe.
Yeah. Well, I guess so, right?
Yeah, because it's all about my interaction. But I give them all credit. I give them all their time. I don't focus on any one
Right?
because there were so many. Um, I worked with 15,000 kids at the YMCA summer camp,
Wow.
and after that, it was hundreds of at-risk kids in the schools as a mentor, as a gifted mentor, and as an at-risk mentor. Um, so I had a whole slew of kids to write about, and I changed all their names. You know, didn't want to, you know.
Well, that was a question that came up too. Do you use your interactions with kids as fodder for your ideas for your books?
Oh, of course. Oh, yeah.
You do.
Yep. That's where I get all my ideas.
Different names and assigned to them, obviously, and amalgamation of several characters to one. But I was curious about that.
That's therapy for me. It's a combination of all my years and all my interactions and all my trials and tests that I had. So yeah, I draw from all that to write about these kids, and so when I'm having a conversation, it really happened. You know, some of those conversations really happened, and some of them are word for word because I got one of those memories that doesn't quit. You know.
Really?
Yeah. I think you call it photogenic, maybe, but I remember things sometimes too well. You know.
Well, it comes in handy sometimes. Now, what was the young man or woman that most broke your heart?
I laugh now because um, that's it's kind of a funny story. It's kind of a cool story in a way. I had a girlfriend in sixth grade. She came from Oklahoma. Her and her twin sister came. They're both Italian. They were just beautiful. They had dark hair, dark eyes, dark complexion. They looked like gypsy children. And I would pine for her. I would listen to the music and attribute a song to her, and I'd listen to it over and over. And yeah, and I went with her in eighth grade, and they moved away, and she stayed in touch with me though through the years, and she became my hero figure for almost all of my females that I wrote in my books.
Really?
Yeah, Carly Raven on Stagheart, and Julie in Eight Ball, Scratch on the Eight Ball. Alicia the Black Rose in my Lionstone book. That's her. And I sent her all those excerpts from those stories one time, and I said, "This is how much you impacted my life."
Oh, really?
Yeah. So she didn't really break my heart, but she had a place in my heart all the time.
Right.
And she still does.
But which of the characters in Behind the Eight Ball, your book, did really break your heart the most? Young man or young woman?
Oh, I don't know. I think the one boy he stayed with me for 3 years, and I thought he really had a chance to make something of himself because
right.
He didn't do drugs, he didn't drink, he didn't do any law violations for the 3 years he was with me. He'd ran from 49 different places and ended up with me.
Wait, 49 different places?
49 different places.
How old was he when he came to you?
13.
49 places and he's only 13 years old?
Yep. Group homes, foster care, treatment centers. He ran. He was a runner. That was his MO. He'd run.
Wow.
And he came to me. He didn't run away from me once.
He didn't?
No, he stayed with me for 3 years.
But how did he turn out that broke your heart?
Well, he broke into a bar in a small town, and when he went to court, the judge was going to sentence him to work release at his dad's house,
right?
Where he would stay at his dad's during the week, and he would come back to jail on weekends and serve his time.
How old was he at that time?
He was 16 then.
16, okay.
And he ran out of court, and it was an automatic felony, automatic year in the state pen.
Oh, brother.
Yeah. And so he ended up serving time, and basically wasted his life. And that was probably the one that made me the saddest, because I really thought he had potential, and he really screwed the pooch on that, because just running out of court is impulsive. I mean, he had a great deal. The judge was very lenient, and
Right.
no, it just he wasn't going to put up with it, and out he went. So
Now, did you interact with young girls?
you know,
So, which broke your heart, or did you not interact with many, or if at all?
no, I never got, I never got, I couldn't get emotionally attached to most of them. They were,
Right.
I'm telling you, they, I don't know. I think the ones that I was assigned to were um, mentally challenged. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know. They were. I don't want to say psycho, but they were off the rails and they were violent. And I was afraid to work with a lot of them because I didn't ever want them to turn on me and accuse me of anything.
Oh,
'Cause they
yeah,
could
that could be a
easily do that.
problem. That could be a
Yeah.
problem.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Women should be
So
placed under a woman's supervision.
well, 95% of my cases were boys, and
Right.
5% were girls. And some of the girls that most of the girls I interacted with, I never had in my home. I never had them in my vehicle.
Right.
I would meet them at isolated locations like libraries or I mean public places like libraries
Right. That's a
and
good idea, Tom.
yeah, and the park. And I wrote a story here a while back about mothers, and I had to think about a lot of these girls that passed through the park. Havelock Park was a haven for kids. A lot
Right.
of those kids grew up to be good. They turned out to be good parents, and I
Oh,
was very surprised and impressed um, because they didn't have no role models, and here they were, becoming a role model.
that's good. That's good to
Yeah,
hear.
yeah.
Now, now that you're through with that phase of your life and just writing, what memories, both good and bad, do you carry with you? That
Well,
you, some that you detailed in Behind the Eight Ball, and some that aren't detailed in Behind the Eight Ball. I got to
yeah.
imagine.
I tell you, the one memory always sticks out with me is one Halloween we had a snowstorm in Lincoln, and we had to cancel Halloween here.
Right.
So the next weekend, I promised my kid and his best friend that we'd go across to the rich side of town, to the rich people's houses, and trick or treat there. So so he dressed up in my Renaissance cloak and hood, and had a bow and arrow on him. He was Robin Hood, and his little friend decked out the same way.
Yep.
And my friend and we sat in my van. We had hot tea, and I took off my shoes. And I put my feet up on the dash, turned the heater on. It was snowing. It was cold out, and here come the kid and his friend, and there was a bunch of parents coming, going to intersect with them, with their kids. And
Right.
suddenly he took that bow off his head, and it got stuck on the back of his head, and he bowed like this, and it came out and snapped him, and he had a fit. And my friend looked at me. He says, "Aren't you going to stop him?" I said, "Nope." I said, "He can deal with it, and those parents can deal with
Yep.
it, and those kids will probably need therapy after that." But I remember that night, and I sat there in that moment, and I thought, "You are going to miss this someday."
Oh
And
boy.
I remember Seals and Croft used to sing a song, "We May Never Pass This Way Again." And I thought, that's exactly what this moment is.
Oh,
And as bad as he was, and fired off, and outbursts like he was doing, uh, yeah, I kind of missed that,
yeah.
He
Well,
got in the van, we drove on home, and he said, "Damn bow and arrow."
well, anyway, you can learn more about Tom Frye's adventures in Behind the Eight Ball. It's a really fascinating book about his life as a grief counselor and a uh, defiance disorder counselor. And what else, Tom?
Drug abuse
Yeah, drug abuse and
and
abusive
truancy,
relationship.
because I did kept a lot of kids in school.
Yeah, you can get his book on Amazon. It's Behind the Eight Ball. And how do the people get a hold of you on Facebook?
Tom J. Frye on Facebook.
Right.
I've got
And
3,500 friends on there right now, and
3,500 friends is a lot.
yeah, they're avid readers. They read my stories. I post short stories on there every day.
And what's your website?
www.tomfrye.org.
www.tomfrye.org. And his publisher is Whitecap Publications. That's, of course, at whitecappublications.com. And I'll see you next week, Tom, because I'm very interested in your other books
Okay, all
for
right.
asking your questions. So until I see you then, I bid you goodbye.
All right, thanks, Rick.
Right.